What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TRAK 27, a TRAK Christmas. We invite you guys for a special Christmas with the Rook and the Kid, with the analyst and the medical guy. But first, we want to get it out there. If you are a first-time listener, if you have been listening to us in the past, make sure to download, follow, subscribe when you listen to us. Share it on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you like to present your social media. Share this message across and shatter the script with us. But we thank you guys for coming in and tuning in. Like we said, shatter the script every Wednesday. This is a new episode of TRAK. And we got a little special edition this week. I'm going to be out of town along with everyone else all next week. So we decided to do a two-part episode series this week, releasing Wednesday and Saturday morning. So in this first episode, we're going to be covering a lot of the recap. We're going to have a shatter the script for both episodes. And then Friday, we'll record, drop it on Saturday, and we'll do our predictions. So we're going to have recap for the Cowboys games, predictions for the Miami game, and all the things in between. So, and a double edition of TRAK rankings for Christmas to wrap us up before the holiday. And we are excited for that. So, the analyst joining us today for TRAK 27 Part 1 and for Part 2 on Saturday. I always get y'all two mixed up every time, and it pisses me the hell off. The medical guy, the
medical list.
Yeah, God
Jared,
bless America.
Man, the Rook.
Write that shit down. The medical guy is joining us for Part 1, and then we've got the analyst in Part 2 later this week. But let's get into the Shadow of the Script segment. Of course, if you guys have been paying attention and you've been on Twitter, you saw the Rashard Mendenhall famous tweet that he put out. And this is the former running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He said, "I'm sick and tired of average white guys commenting on football. Y'all not even good at football. Can we please replace the Pro Bowl with an all-black versus all-white bowl so that these cats can stop trying to teach me who's good at football? I'm better than your GOAT." and as you can imagine, the internet took storm with this heavy. Will Compton put some stuff out there with Busting with the Boys. Even some ESPN analysts were having some fun with it. Jason Whitlock he has his own platform out there. Said some pretty it was serious, but it was it actually got to Rashard Mendenhall about him having a white wife. Man, it was a pretty strong message, but we thought it'd be best to draft an all-white team and see how we would fare with it. And I know it's going to be similar to all the other people out there, but we want to add a little taste to it, a little spice to it, getting a GM, getting a coach in there, get the whole staff in there. And I guarantee you we're gonna solve this thing right here. But the medical guy, I'm sure you can start us off with a little bit of our offensive roster, and we'll just start collabing about who we can get on this all-white team.
Yeah, and to start it off, I mean, this is all fun. I mean, everybody's had this conversation before. If you've ever been in a locker room, it doesn't matter what sport either. Like you literally, outside of like, I don't know, maybe golf and hockey and stuff like that. But like, this is all fun and games, and it's fun to talk about. And I'm sure he meant to be serious, kind of. And then everybody took it like, oh yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Finally, we could get this out there. But yeah, just get us started on the offensive side. I mean, start with the QB. I mean, it's pretty. I went with Josh Allen as the first one, and then like your backups would be like Justin Herbert and Aaron Rodgers. Like, I mean, I feel like QB right there, those are pretty even matched, right?
Right.
Because you've got on both sides of the spectrum, you've got really good quarterbacks on both sides. Now, it will be interesting to see like what you would say about, like Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott.
I was going to ask that. Who gets those guys?
I mean, I think I saw a tweet from someone today. Oh, I can't remember, but it was like Patrick Mahomes eats ketchup on everything. He's on the white side. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, that's such a great tweet, but a great point. But we'll go to running back. Now, this one, probably the best running back in the league, but there's only one. Christian McCaffrey. That's pretty easy.
No doubter. No doubter.
The thing is with that one, it stops there. It's Christian McCaffrey, and then you look around the league and maybe find fullbacks. Right. And with that, you've got like your lefties, your Juszczyk, and then what is it?
Patrick
Picard.
Ricard. Yeah.
Yeah, Picard is it Picard or Ricard?
Ricard.
Picard, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get in the wide receivers, and really that doesn't go very far either. But you've got three good ones. I have Cup, Thielen, and Nakua. But those are some pretty good receivers and stuff like that. Then, those three are all probably pretty close. Okay. You get into tight ends, and I think it changes a little bit. Okay. You got tight ends, you've got Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews, and Hawkinson. And you could throw Ferguson in there. You could throw McBride in there if you wanted to. But you've got some pretty stud casting tight ends right there where I think the lighter skin tone takes that battle. And then you get into O-line, where I think the lighter skin tone might have that battle as well.
We got some dogs. We got some dogs there,
right? On mine, I have Kelsey. I have Martin. I have Nelson. I have Colton Miller. And I have Lane Johnson. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think we're taking the edge on that one. Yeah. But that's kind of my offensive side of the ball. I'm thinking tight end and O-line. We take that. If Christian McCaffrey doesn't ever get hurt, I think we're taking that one. And then, but if he gets hurt, then we lose immediately. And then QB and wide receiver. I think wide receiver. I think we're beat. But QB, I think that's pretty evenly matched. But what do you have for the defensive side?
Yeah, and I'll start by adding a little bit to the offense. It's important to have Aaron Rodgers on our side because of his stance politically, medically, and I think he belongs. I think a lot of the white people would really, avenge that ideology for him having us on his side. He could not. He's just a locker room guy. He's a presence you have in the locker room, and then you have the cover of Madden, as the face of your franchise, and Josh Allen. But a hot take with the light skins. I don't think you should be able to pick a team. If you're not 100% on that side of the coin, then you don't deserve a roster spot. So you're just gonna have to sit this one out. Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, I don't know, but Bryce Young, can he say it? Probably, but it's that's the roster right there, and I like having Christian McCaffrey on one side of the ball, obviously, and then our tight end room is insane with Kelsey, Hawkinson, Laporta, Kittle, Ferguson. Wow. Like, you get those 5 cats out there with probably Kelsey playing your third receiver in the slot. Hey, we got a little scheme we got right there, but
personnel.
And I ain't got the entire roster for the defense, but I know we got some dogs we can put up there at the edge spot. Of course, you can put TJ Watt in there on the edge. You can put his brother inside if you wanted to. JJ Watt probably would come out of retirement for this. You got your Trey Hendricksons, your Brian Breese's, your Kyle Phillips. I'm pretty sure is close. I think he's white. But Kyle Phillips would be fun to have in there. And I'm probably missing Aiden Hutchinson over there on the other side. And then at linebacker, you got, a lot of people call him Olive Oil. A lot of people call him, the Italian stallion. But Matt Milano, Leighton Vander Esch pre-injury would be, a decent backup for depth. Luke Gifford, hell, you could put him in there as a practice squad guy. Let's see.
I have Alex Anzalone and Cole Holcomb.
Yeah. Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
Luke Wilson would be a good one. And then as our linebackers coach, you get a guy like Brian Urlacher in there, somebody that's killed somebody before. At safety, I got Harrison Smith. That's about all we got. I'm bringing Jeff Heath back. Jeff Heath is back in the mix, playing strong safety, laying some wood.
Well, you got Blankenship as well.
Blankenship, yeah, it's right. Reed Blankenship out there at safety. So we got 3 safeties that know how to lay the wood. They're disciplined, sneaky, athletic guys. And then at cornerback, we need more safeties because they're gonna have to play. They're gonna have to play corner. We're gonna play man down, zero coverage, and just go after it. That's basically the defense side. So you got some dogs. You got some absolute dogs. Get some guys inside like Kyle Phillips. I think we got a shot. Like, it ain't gonna be no ball buster. It ain't gonna be like, hey, we're gonna light up the scoreboard. time of possession, run the football. Jason Garrett probably should be a good head coach for this team.
Yeah, our whole stat line is going to read like high IQ,
Sneaky
high
athletic.
IQ, hard worker, sneaky athletic, knows
4.0 GPA.
Yeah, just like the very stereotypical like white football player, like grayed out. So if I'm looking at it now, when we get to the defensive side, like interior defensive line, we're losing 100%.
Yeah,
Linebackers maybe could be competitive. Okay. Yeah. Safety, no depth. So if one of them goes down, it's really looking like some offensive players might have played two ways.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then DBs were beat. We're playing cover 3 zone all day. And then one where we take it seems easy, kicker punter. I think we're winning.
Yeah,
100%.
We're winning there, 100%.
We are winning there,
and we don't even need Young Hoku. We've got our own. We got Brandon Aubrey at kicker. We've got Brian Anger or Matt Areza at punter. And then I want Eric Weddle to come out of retirement too.
There we go.
He's probably got some extra energy left. But let's get into head coach, GM, and player anthem. I think head coach, there's a lot you could choose from. Over 80%. You could choose. We got y'all there. Gosh, I mean, you could have Andy Reid as the head coach. You could have Bill Belichick as defensive coordinator. Offensive minded coach, you put Kyle Shanahan there. Passing game coordinator, Ben Johnson. I mean, you just go down the list, get the ultimate exterior guys. And I think we got the coaches on lock. I'd love to have a DB coach out there that knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But there probably is one out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, and this is my hot take of the year, my GM for the all-white team is going to be Donald Trump. And that's a good all-white team. And you can hear the dog barking back here. Bark, bark, bark. Yeah, our team going to be barking too. All right. So that kind of wraps up, Rashard Mendenhall's tweet. In retrospect, like him having that tweet out there is just wild in itself. Because if you said this on the other way around, people would just lose their ever-loving minds. If I flipped the tweet and said, like all these dudes talking about blah, blah, blah should never talk because they can't do this. And said another race besides white, I'd be canceled. And we'd probably be famous. But
absolutely. But like we said at the beginning, it is fun because any locker room has had this debate or whatever. Yes. Like any locker room has been like, and even like you could see like some people comment like I said about the Patrick Mahomes thing. There's the same comment where it was like, it's like, nah. It like talk about Travis Kelce, be like, nah, Travis Kelce's black. He's on the other side.
Yeah. Max Crosby. Crosby. I didn't mention his name.
They were like, no, we're keeping Max. And it's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, we got a couple white guys that would love to audition to be on the other side for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely fun to talk about. And like I said, every locker room has had this discussion before. So it was funny. It was a crazy ass tweet, but it was funny. And it is kind of funny to see like a lot of the media and then Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, like taking a lighthearted route with it instead of, going what the normal route is where they take it and it becomes this, a Jason Whitlock type of route where it's just got just ungodly serious when it was like, hey brother, just simmer.
We ain't got to go that far.
Yeah. Just calm down. Like it's not that big of a deal.
All that for 500 likes. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Oh man.
All right. 2-minute drill presented to you by the medical guy. We got some medical injury analysis updates, and this is very important. You're going into your semifinals. Some people are going into their championships for fantasy football. Obviously, we got some, it's big implementations for the league itself with some teams that really need to win in terms of seeding, in terms of divisional wins. So we got the medical guy with the 2-minute drill.
Yeah. So let's get it started. So we got Ronnie Stanley, concussion for the Baltimore Ravens offensive lineman. Not really a big fantasy thing, but they run the ball a lot, so it's something to pay attention to. Jamar Chase has an AC injury. I think I just got an update just a second ago on my phone about that he's really questionable. So keep an eye on that. I know that's a big one for a lot of teams, and with them kind of making a playoff push here a little bit, they're really, really out there slinging the rock. Zach Martin with quad injury that came back good news. That it ended up just being, needed the quad, just tightened up and on and whatnot. Next, Christian Watson, who seems like he's been on the injury report all year with a hamstring injury. It seems like it might be a little worse than expected, so he's questionable. CJ Stroud was out this weekend with a concussion, still going through that protocol, even though they managed to pull off a win, which was nuts. Expect him to be back. Hopefully, it would be good to see him come back and perform well, because you hate to see injuries like that, especially for any player, but a rookie having as good a season, and for such a surprise team like them. Same type of thing with Nico Collins. His is a lower body injury. He's still questionable the last few weeks. He's kind of been in and out of there. Another big one, Michael Pittman Jr., receiver for the Colts. He suffered a concussion on that nasty hit. We saw this last week. It was really good to just see him get up and move, because that was a pretty tough hit he took. And I think the defensive back actually got suspended or something like that. It was pretty bad.
For the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so Zach Moss is another one, had a shoulder injury. What was crazy is that he got injured, and then the rest of the Colts running backs seemed like they all could run the ball. So that was a pretty crazy injury. So see him on the injury list this week. He's questionable. Another big one, Tyreek Hill. He was held out this week. I know that kind of screwed a lot of fantasy owners. I think you in particular.
Yes.
But I'm sure they probably held him out a week, let him get ready, let him get right for this Dallas game. That's what I would have done if I would have been the athletic trainer or the head coach. But expecting to be back in and run around all over the place this weekend against Dallas. And then second to last, I have Chris Olave. He had an ankle injury. He was out this last week, but I think he was out this last week due to a concussion maybe, because he was pretty banged up going into that game with other injuries, and just throw it on top an ankle injury as well. And then last one, Keaton Mitchell, the running back for the Ravens, suffered an ACL tear. And they came out and said he may have suffered more, but for sure, full ACL tear. That's going to be the video analysis we're going to go over. So we're going to get this. We're going to present the screen. Okay, screen. And this one's a little more gruesome. So if you have a sensitive stomach, don't watch. So we've got the Ravens against the Jaguars. Okay. And we've got Keaton Mitchell, number 34. And if you watch here, and whoop, that leg just goes super straight right there into hyperextension. And then we'll take it back a little bit to show. All right. So I'm going to take it right here. Okay. I'm going to pause it real quick and then slow the speed down. All right. So we can get a good look at it. So we have number 34 right there coming around. And what's crazy is it's like a contact, non-contact. But if you look at that left leg, whoop, turns into a wet noodle. And so you see that, and obviously you kind of expect the worst right there. Thankfully, it's just come out with an ACL so far. I'm sure there will probably be meniscus. I'm sure maybe a little PCL, stuff like that. But luckily it didn't fully dislocate or anything. That's similar to the golly, I'm forgetting his name. Maybe it's a Miami running back, University of Miami. Shoot,
it wasn't Jeff Wilson, was it?
No, not University of Miami, like the U back in the day.
I'm not sure.
He ended up coming back from the injury and playing in the NFL, but it's similar to that.
Ricky Williams?
No, it wasn't Ricky Williams. He played for Texas. Man, I cannot remember. It was kind of during the time of Frank Gore. I can't remember who it was now. I saw it earlier, and I'm thinking of the name right now, but but a similar injury. And the big thing with stuff like that, like you obviously have your ACL tears, but stuff like that where it goes into an extreme range of motion, you really want to pay attention to some of those vascular structures and stuff like that. But thoughts and prayers for full recovery, and hopefully he gets back to that same status that he was before, because really he was a great running back this year, even though he didn't get the carries. Willis McGahee, there you go. You put it in the chat right there. Good job.
Yeah, there you go.
But similar to that, where it just went, straightened out all the way, and that ligament just gave out. So that kind of wraps up my injury list and video analysis. Next, we'll get on to the TRAKers' favorite topic, the DB list. And so I have a couple of candidates. First, and this doesn't go in any particular order, but first I have written down my TRAK fantasy team this week. Just an absolute shit show of a showing. Guy I'm playing forgot to start one of his, or started someone who wasn't playing. His starting quarterback got hurt, and it's just like I got it wrapped up in the bag, and then had no production from multiple players. Dak Prescott gave me a dud. Breece Hall gave me a dud. It was just a tough day. I think I put up 80 points. And after the whole controversy with how I got in, it just sucked to see. It just sucked to see that it come to an end like that. So I guess we'll battle for third place. See if I can win some money back. Something.
Yeah.
And this week I'll probably put up about 170.
Right.
And it'll just make me more mad. So
I want to give a quick shout out real quick, and that's to Blades in the consolation bracket. The dude put up 200 points in the consolation bracket at 5 and at what is he? He was 3 and 4 and 10. 4 and 10 in the consolation bracket.
He was last, right?
Last
he
place.
Finished last and then just shredded somebody.
Oh, I bet he was livid. I know he has Josh Allen. I know he has Christian McCaffrey. But to explain what happened in the in the really tight nutshell is we have a penalty. If you don't fill your roster, it's -5 points deducted. There's a lot of people were 7-7, 8-6. This one guy playing the medical guy was in this game winning by 4 points. Forgot to put in a defense and Aaron Jones. And of course, if some people aren't accustomed to the rules, he's like, I had no idea. Well, I have a document in our chat of the rule. So he gets subtracted 5 points. Cuzzo gets in. He moves down to the 6th spot, the final playoff spot. We're giving Cuzzo a shot. We were giving the medical guy a shot. And everybody's team basically dudded in that first round. So,
oh, dude, everybody. And God, it's just tough. So that was my first candidate. That was my first candidate for DB list. Second, okay, and this is kind of a lighthearted take on it, but Ravens running backs in the past 4 years, I feel like all of them have gotten hurt. Every single one.
That's a brutal one.
And it seems like every year they have. I mean, even this year they've had 2 have just crazy injuries, and every year it just seems like one of them gets hurt. And then we'll go with this is my top one. And it was actually recommended to me by the analyst. And I think maybe it might have been you or the Rook. But over the weekend, we saw a story come out that Joe Biden, our president of the United States, was in a car accident. And the guy on the DB list is actually the driver. James Cooper read an article that he was obviously driving home under the influence, which nobody should ever do. But if there was a time to, just have such just an awful experience with doing this, you probably picked the worst person to do it to. And thankfully nobody was hurt, and that's what we can talk about. But man, to get drunk and then get behind the wheel of a vehicle, which you should never do, but to do it and then hit the president of the United States car. That's the eternal DB list, man. Like, that's so tough. Could you imagine talking to his insurance or anybody's insurance and being like, hey, so tell us what happened. Hey. It's like, yeah, so I got in a wreck and hit, I hit Joe Biden. And they're like,
what?
Joe Biden? They're like, yeah, the president of the United States. I can imagine he just heard dial tone, immediate, hang up, whoop, you're done. So that wraps up my DB list. We've got my TRAK fantasy team. Ravens running backs, and then James Cooper, the individual who drunkenly hit the
Ran
president
into
of the
the
United
president.
States. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that wraps up my part of the 2-minute drill.
Yeah, and to add context to that, the reason I sent it is a guy on Twitter, Alex Sears. He said, "Imagine climbing into your car, absolutely blasted, and trying to make it home without getting busted, and you left turn straight into the freaking president."
Yeah, dude, it's so bad.
Oh gosh, that is DB list to the max. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on into our Week 15 recap. You can check the banners at the bottom for a couple highlights to kind of give you a preview of what all we're going to cover. But we're going to start out with our Thursday night football game, and this was the Raiders versus the Chargers. Of course, the Raiders, man. If you were watching this and you happened to miss this, it was 49-0 at halftime. Raiders ended up winning this game 63-21. But there were some minute details in this game. But medical guy, you got this one. I'll let you recap, and I'll give my 2 cents in.
Yeah. So, I mean, nobody looked forward to this game anyway, but I was kind of glad I started watching a little bit of it because it was like, I mean, it's just brutal. Like Thursday night football game, Chargers, who are a team that aren't doing very well, Raiders, who are a team that aren't doing very well also. And so the Raiders win 63-21. What the hell? And that's what I have written down. My first stat was like a what the hell game. Yeah. It's like you turned it on and it's like, Raiders score immediately. And I was like, oh, okay, let's go. I have Davante Adams on one of my teams. So I was like,
offense is humming. Yeah.
Let's go. But at first it was like, hey, we're going to throw it to everybody except Davante Adams. I think like Myers scored, like their 4th receiver on the depth chart scored. Michael Mayer scored. I was like, Jacoby Myers threw a touchdown, who fortunately got caught by Davante Adams. I was like, bro, we're going to go through this game and they're going to score 60 points and Davante Adams is going to have 8. And I'm going to be so pissed. Yeah. So that's what I have on that first part. Second, I think this was a nail in the coffin game, of course, for the Chargers and the staff there. I think we talked about it offline and in chats and text groups. Like, I think I said the whole staff should be fired at half. I know that might be a little egregious, but like that was just so bad. Yeah. So bad. And they couldn't do anything right. And then, it's kind of a play on words, but Aiden O'Connell, I call him AOC, played the game with very non-conservative play, was slinging the rock all over the place. Seemed like he couldn't do anything wrong, really. And he was spreading the ball around, throwing touchdowns, making plays. I mean, this was one of those where this looks like a Madden score. Like you play you visit for the weekend and your little cousins are like, hey, you want to play some Madden? Like, yada, yada. And it's like, yeah, cool. And then like, it's one of those like where your cousin scores first, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, you're like,
you gotta lean up in your chair and be
it's like, all right, well, we're about to end this nonsense. And so it was just crazy to see that the Chargers looked awful. They looked like a team that almost gave up. I know there were some good things that happened. I think the quarterback actually ended up having a decent stat line. Josh Palmer had a pretty good game and stuff like that, but overall it was just a terrible game. And then we get into it. The coach gets fired the next day, which was honestly about 6 weeks too late. And I know we haven't mentioned on here talking about some top candidates. I started looking at some, and I think Brandon Staley was mentioned as more of a defensive coach coming in, and I think a lot of places outside of a couple are moving into hiring like offensive minded guys as a head coach. So some of the top ones I have are Ben Johnson, obviously Detroit. I think his name's been thrown out there a lot. This one's kind of a joke, but Kellen Moore, LOL. But, he's always been talking about the coach and waiting and stuff like that. But you saw that offense just take an absolute nosedive this year with all the weapons. I know they had injuries and stuff, but like even with the injuries, like, Justin Herbert's held to such high regard. Austin Eckler is supposedly a top 5 running back. You've got an okay-ish O-line, but I mean, you still had Mike Williams who played for a little bit, Josh Palmer who played for a little bit, Keaton. You had these guys that could play, and they couldn't. They were so stagnant all the time on offense, and it's kind of like we said, like when things aren't going exactly right for Kellen Moore, it's awful. It's not like a good game and an okay game. It's good and then shit. Another one which would be interesting, Jim Harbaugh. from Michigan. His name has been mentioned for years now, but with some of the weird stuff that's going on at Michigan, you could see him probably trying to get out. And then last one, if they're going to go with a defensive-minded head coach, they have Jim Schwartz over there at Cleveland, the DC. Their defense with injuries, with all this, has been good all year. He's kind of changed his scheme up a little bit, been way more aggressive. I think that would probably be a pretty good fit for, the Chargers having such high-level positions and players on that defense. Right. Kind of get into that aggressive mindset, really get into it. And so if they were going to go maybe a defensive route, that would be the other person I would pick. That's kind of the top four I had. I think it would be a mistake to have Kellen Moore, but I know he's always been considered, the coach in waiting, like I said. But do you have anything to add on this game or the coaching candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was crazy. There's a couple of I've been getting some Philadelphia Eagles accounts seep into my Twitter feed, and they're asking to fire, a guy like Nick Sirianni and get Kellen Moore, which I think is just full circle for sure. I think that's hilarious. And we used Kellen Moore as a scapegoat last year, to define Dak Prescott's season a little bit. And I think it's kind of coming to fruition here. Also full circle. And that might've been a reason why some people argue Dak Prescott was so hot and cold last year. So yeah, that's kind of why we joke about like Kellen Moore being that candidate for the Chargers. But another guy that could be a sleeper is Sean McDermott. He might be out there from the Buffalo Bills, and he's kind of a defensive-minded coach. He has experience with a star quarterback, and he's had some success in terms of being relevant in the playoffs. You get a good supporting cast around him. Maybe this offense elevates, but the wide receivers, over there, this is 2 years in a row where they have just struggled to stay healthy. I know Keaton Allen just got hurt, and he had a phenomenal season. Mike Williams, I mean, my God, you can get 4 games out of him, and then, heaven forbid, he gets another knee injury and he's out for the year. And then Quentin Johnson just hasn't seemed to get it all together. The Chargers got a lot to figure out. They got the highest payroll on defense right now. You got a dude leading the NFL in sacks and nothing to show for it. Yeah. And it's just like brutal. It's, they always say that the Cowboys, the AFC, but with all the talent, I can't really see the Cowboys screwing up this bad. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen a roster on paper this good finish this bad with a record. And that's what I have to say primarily about the Chargers. Going into the Raiders, there's at least some hope in there. Obviously you're not going to go with any of those 3 quarterbacks that are on the roster. But there's options out there. You got Colin Kaepernick, RG3 now, but Aiden McConnell, AOC, he might be the ugliest quarterback on the planet. No offense, dude, but that dude, even the graphic that they make for him on Fox, man, I'm like DB list for sure.
But he's tough to look at.
But hey, sometimes those dudes, it's like the ugly dude that bags a 10, like a blonde, and you're like, how the hell did he do that? And it's the same thing with AOC going out there throwing 5 bombs or, 4 or 5 bombs. You're like, what? This guy. So shout out AOC there, amazing game. But yeah, the candidates you mentioned obviously are top tier. And
then I think, if Eric Bieniemy didn't stay, which I think it would be a good fit for him at the Commanders, if he didn't stay there, I think he'd be a great fit at Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
He's great OC mind. He's shown it this year with the Commanders, who the defense is awful, but I mean their offense can hum, and I think he could be really well at the Chargers as well. Those are just kind of the top 4. I mean, Kellen Moore is kind of a joke, but yeah.
But you never know. Some people might actually do that. And then of course all the injuries: Justin Herbert out, Keenan Allen out, Mike Williams. You just go down the list. They had nothing to play for. I mean, but I've never seen a team give up that bad. All right. Saturday, the 3:25 game, the Bengals versus the Vikings. I like this one. I like a little, a story that nobody knows about till after the fact. But if you didn't see it, it's kind of a video that Jake Browning on the sideline, kind of catching the noises of the sideline, said, "You should have never cut me." To the Vikings, which I thought was legendary. But hey, slow start for the Bengals in this game, but Browning comes through in what I just mentioned, a revenge game. T. Higgins, that touchdown was incredible. It really set the tone to close out the game. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to start him in a lot of leagues. If you've had him this year, you've been really frustrated. But in terms of a guy who's really trying to help out his team, with this last 3 games. You mentioned Jamar Chase with the AC injury, could miss some time. T. Higgins, it's time for him to step up, and maybe prove to people that he is that number one and possibly earn a mega contract next year with a contender who needs a number one, like the Chiefs or maybe like a Ravens team, or you name it. He can probably fit in somebody's offense. The Colts could be an exciting spot for him and Pittman side by side with a young quarterback. You never know. So now it's his time to shine. But T. Higgins, amazing play. If you didn't see it, goes up for a 50-50 ball and he stretches his arm span into the end zone. It was sick. But moving on, Ty Chandler for the Vikings. This is more production in this game than we ever saw from Madison all year. And this is some 3-4 year running back out of the practice squad coming in there and with nothing nothing held back. And so fantastic game. He saw a couple of fantasy owners start him this week in some of my playoff leagues, 12-man leagues. And I'm like, okay, that's like, he knows ball. But they got lucky with him starting him. And here's my thing I'm excited for the Vikings in the future. I'm not sure if Kirk Cousins will stay. I know Jetta and Kirk Cousins want to be a package deal going forward. But Jordan Addison and Jetta, if they stay together, that's a top 7, top 5 duo in the league for the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, they're going to be elite. I mean, Nick Mullins going out there, and this isn't the first time that he's gone out there and just kind of chunked it around as a backup for a lot of passing yards. Did the same thing years ago for the 49ers. And then the last thing I'll say is, Jake Browning is 3-1 since Burrow injury, and he could potentially take the Bengals to a 9-6 record with some tough opponents to finish out the year. Are we thinking playoffs with the Cincinnati Bengals? With Jake Browning, this is, and does this speak volumes about like the importance of weapons in the terrible situation and the Chargers with Justin Herbert? Like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, when Burrow's in, he's got these weapons, he's putting up all these elite numbers. All right, well, what kind of drop off did we see when Browning came in? Well, he's throwing 2 tutties a game, over 200 plus yards every game, in around the 60% completion percentage. He's winning games, and this is what happens when you're supplied weapons. And it's kind of to say, like, it's not saying Joe Burrow isn't as good as people think he is, but it is saying that it does make a difference. And that's why you have to apply these double standards to quote the kid, you got to apply these double standards to these other teams that may not have the same luxury as having a T. Higgins and a Jamar Chase and a Tyler Boyd and a Joe Mixon. So Browning, this was a perfect opportunity for him to kind of set the tone for himself and maybe earn a contract somewhere else and start somewhere. But, and then on the flip side of the coin, you got Herbert. Nothing. I mean, just injuries all over the place. He's got all these weapons. He doesn't have a great, I don't know. The brand over there just seems to fail him. And I think that Herbert should be earned a lot more respect in terms of, his career path. I mean, 4 different head coaches, I think, in his 4 years. It's just an atrocity. So,
and it's the same thing you say about, something that's talked about is like Lamar Jackson. Like, I mean, his last 2 years, his top weapon has gone out. And they have running backs get hurt, it seems like, every couple weeks. And like, their best weapon right now is Odell Beckham Jr. And
crazy.
And so, so like you hold, I mean, Isaiah Likely's done well, but I mean, he's not a Mark Andrews. And so it's just the same difference is like, what would they be? I mean, when he had Hollywood Brown, like, you could see like, oh, that weapon made a difference. Like you said with T. Higgins, like, that would be nuts to just have like one bona fide top end receiver out there with Andrews and OBJ and Bateman and stuff like that. Like, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. And people, Lamar's in the MVP race as well. So, with the weapons that he had, like the quote unquote weapons he has this year, once again. So, all right, moving on. Lions versus Broncos.
Yeah. So we'll get into this. Lions win 42, Broncos 17. Notes I have on this game started off like an absolute bar burner. So it started off pretty slow. I think it was 3 straight possessions. Each team was punts, and I was like, oh god, this is not looking good for the Lions, because that's the brand of football the Broncos want to play. It's like basically you lull everybody to sleep, and then all of a sudden you get to the fourth quarter and it's 14-17, and Russell Wilson has the ball or something like that. So, but after a while, the Detroit Lions started getting everything going. They've got like you talk about a slew of weapons. They've got it. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. This was a Sam Laporta game, obviously, a Jared Goff game. They've got 2 high-end running backs. They've got a crazy good O-line. And, this game, the defense finally showed up a little bit. And it shows what this team could be if the defense plays okay on the other side. That's the thing. I don't think they need just some top 10 or top 5 elite defense. They just need, 12 to 15 range, and I think they could be a really good team. But some of my notes going in, I think the Broncos are frauds. I think they've kind of teetered on like, oh, are they good or are they not? It's just like, this is such a bad game. Like, it's a bad defense. And so that was tough to see. And then I have obviously the Jared Goff offensive game. It seemed like after a couple of possessions, it seemed like they just yeah, I don't know what that is, but
that's the kid sneezing.
Oh, okay.
Hey, bless you, brother.
Yeah, bless you, Hunter. But I mean, they seem like once they got it going, that they couldn't do anything wrong on defense or on offense. And then my last note was the Detroit Lions played a better game on defense. And that's good. That's going to be something they absolutely need to be an actual contender in the NFC at least. And then getting into, I think what we talked about, the offense, the offsides call against the Broncos.
Yeah.
Yes, it sucked, but the game was starting to get out of reach anyway.
Right.
And then if we just go into like Sean Payton getting in Russell Wilson's ass on the sideline, I kind of have mixed feelings about it because, like, yeah, I kind of like, seeing a head coach like, hey, he might be our quarterback, but like he's not above everybody. Like he still can get ripped into. But at the same time, like I feel like you got to get your point across and then like let it go. Like they don't need to have time to have the camera on them for a 45-second ass chewing. And Russell Wilson's just like little kid, like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Dude, get your piece across, rip his ass for 10 seconds and be like, let's go. Let's move on. But that was kind of my only points about it is like, good seeing him rip into his ass. Maybe don't do it for a minute to where, everybody can see it. And so that's just kind of my take on it. What do you have on this game or anything like that?
Yeah, so we were talking about them being frauds and stuff, and it actually goes right in hand in hand of what I had because I was kind of seeping through the box score because I was looking at some defenses, comparing stats or whatever, and I was peeping at the Broncos. Boy, every top 10 offense that they've played, and I'm 99% sure I'm right. I'm just going off memory here. Dude, they got smoked.
Yeah,
every like a plausible offense, that competent offense that was out there, they got smoked. And then all these other teams, there's not a whole lot of separation. Yeah. So it's kind of reminds me of your Giants last year, where when they played a relevant team, they're getting smoked. But if they're playing like we played the AFC South last year in the division, that was the main reason why we had an influxation of records and why everybody thought the Giants were so good. And then we get into this year, I'm like, it ain't no catwalk this year. No, it ain't no cakewalk this year. And that's why I had the Giants finishing under 500 and, the Commanders finishing way below 500. And people thought I was crazy when I said it in group chats. And look, here we are now. Yeah. But, looking at the Broncos, it's like that. I mean, they probably won't make the playoffs. They could insert their way in. But, the AFC South is all tied at 8-6. And Texans have the tiebreaker on the Broncos, I believe, and I just don't see a way that they get in. But they're very game management like, and it depends on their opponent. Yeah, because if it's a competent offense, they're not winning that game.
Whatsoever. And like I mentioned, I think it was a couple pods ago. Like they play just good enough to beat teams. Like they don't blow anybody out. They don't. Like you look at them and you're like, man, they're not really like dominant in these wins or like, or like dominant throughout the game or like going shot for shot with somebody. It's just like, oh, they hang around and then they sneak one out. And that's just, they played, like you said, a good team, a much better team, high caliber team. And they got blown out of the water.
Right. Exactly. All right. and we'll split between this and the rest of the games. We'll go into our TRAK ranking. Your top three. This is your top three best things about Christmas, essentially. Your Christmas features. This could be anything from food to traditions to drinks to games. The whole shebang. The same thing as our last 3 weeks. We're starting at gold and transitioning between the two of our picks and move all the way to diamond and possibly a vibranium. But yeah, all right. What's your gold on this TRAK ranking?
So getting us started, my gold, and this is I might have to explain it a little bit, but Christmas cold weather. Okay. And what I mean by that is like when it starts getting cold in East Texas and Texas and in general, especially East Texas, Southeast Texas, kind of where you're at, like it kind of sucks, right? Like
Right.
it hurts. Like you put on layers and it's like your hands hurt, your feet hurt. But like when it gets closer to Christmas, you're like, that's the weather you want. And you're like, oh yeah, like we don't really get snow, or especially you. I know in a couple places I've lived, we've gotten snow and stuff like that, and it feels right. When it's 30 to 40 degrees or maybe colder, like on December 20th through the 30th, like it's like, oh yeah, this is nice. This is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Good cold Christmas weather. If it was 75 or 80, like it can be in Texas sometimes, it's like, bro, I don't want to be December 25th and like sitting outside in t-shirts and shorts. Like that kind of sucks.
No. Yeah.
And so this is where I think cold weather in Texas kind of gets a pass, and I like it because it gives more of that, holiday hallmark feel when the weather is actually cold during Christmas time.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, the past 6 days where I've been at has been like 40 degrees in the morning, 60 degrees during the day, and back to 50. And that's winter. That's winter for us, and it gets a good feeling. Makes the lights kind of sparkle a little lighter. Mine is kind of a hot take because I think a lot of people forget about it, and it's mistletoe. Hey, when you were in grade school, when you were going to school and everything, you'd want your crush to have it. You want to bring a mistletoe, and your crush would be around. You're like, man, I wish I would catch my crush under the mistletoe, and let her know what happens, middle school all the way to high school. You're like, hey, should I, and now people use liquor, as like a covenant for it, and you're like, nah, bro, old fashioned. Put a mistletoe, put on your hat, put the hat on her, something like that, and be like, hey, look, mistletoe, the rules. Smooth.
The rules.
Hey, the rules. I don't make them up and just go. But it's romantic.
Just enforce them.
It's romantic. It's loving. It's pleasurable. It's respectful. With consent, and hey, mistletoe in there. Go,
sneak
bro.
That in there, right there. Yeah. Perfect. I like it.
DC principal over here, right here.
Yeah.
Right, do I have consent to kiss your mistletoe?
All right. We'll move into my platinum ranking. And this might be a hot take. I know you may not be experiencing it yet, but once you do have a significant other and have to go to all these Christmases, I like to call it the family drive across Texas marathon. Okay, and we talk about not liking it and always being a pain and whatnot, and you start thinking further down the line, you're like, it's one of those things you think back to and you're like, damn, I wish I could go to these 8 Christmases that I have to go to, or I wish, I could go to these 7 Christmases that I have to, but now I'm only going to 4. And of the obvious circumstances why that happens. And it's just something that I think we complain about now, but when we're older, we're gonna be like, damn, I wish we could do that again and whatnot. Because right now it does kind of suck because we got 2 dogs that are big. Yeah. Obviously, me and Heather, we want to take her car because gas mileage and everything like that, and then presents and everything we have to pack. And we're like, we have enough room to basically sit right here and like turn left and right, and that's it. And then it's like, we go to Dallas, to Lufkin, to Dallas, back to Tyler, to Lufkin, back to Dallas, possibly San Antonio every now and then. And it's like, golly. Yeah. So I think when and my sister gets married December 30th. So literally from, I think the 21st to the 30th, like Heather and I have an event that we have to be at, whether it be a Christmas or a wedding ordeal or something. We have something for literally almost 10 days. And it's something that we complain about now, but I know later in life we're gonna be like, damn, I wish we could do that again, or I wish we were doing that this year, or something like that. So that's my platinum. driving across, making the extra trip, making the extra effort to be there for whoever you need to be there during the Christmas time and the holiday time.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a blessing that you're like, you wish you were in the good times. You wish you knew you were in the good times and you were actually in them, and then coming to the reality that we are.
Yeah,
we are in the good. So, all right, platinum. My platinum is Silent Night at Church. I think this one's legendary. It also depends on the setting. Some people might be in bigger churches. I like those medium-sized churches where you kind of know some people in the crowd. When I was growing up at the church that I was at, you kind of knew where each family was sitting, and so you had like this bondage between everybody that was in there. You knew their faith, you knew your own faith, and then you just kind of reflect on the year you had, and all the things that were a blessing, all the things that were a challenge, all the lessons learned, and you just sit there and reflect, and you hear the harmony of like human beings hitting that God hurts, and, that God signal, and with the candles everywhere, just the setting, everything, but just that moment of reflection too is just special. It gives you goosebumps, kind of maybe shed a thug tear, and you're like, damn,
thug tear.
Like I had like years ago, like, man, I can't believe I did this. I got a job. I started a podcast. I got through this, man. Like Silent Nights hit different for sure.
Yeah, and to touch on yours, I almost put it on here is like, the Christmas program at any church, right? And it's like, I know we're all, Baptist, Southern Baptist, and like, they always do a Christmas program, but during the Christmas program, they recruit the top-notch singers, right?
Yeah, they bring out the big ones.
Yeah, they're bringing out the people that can hit those God notes, right?
Hallelujah.
And so it is always nice going back to your family church, or we always go to Dimon Avenue, I believe, and they bring out, hey, John, you're singing this.
Yeah.
And they're like, he's
Larry.
Like, he's like, oh yeah. And it's not like, me and you aren't up there singing. It's like the ones you're like, man, why didn't you sing professionally kind of thing. And so I think to add on to yours,
the Lord. That's
why. And to add on to your point, it is always nice going into all the Christmas programs and stuff like that, and just seeing everybody and hearing people sing, and it's sounding good as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but to get into my diamond, and we might have the same one, and mine's kind of a broad, I guess, diamond ranking, but Christmas traditions. I know you've mentioned some in the past couple podcasts, especially with the Muppets and stuff like that.
I almost put them in it again.
And it's funny. It's funny that we joke about that, but it's super cool that, everybody just kind of has their own thing that they do. I know for us, we always go to what we call our Aunt Tootie. It's where it's the whole Clark family meets up at their house. If you go, like you're going to Nana and Gramps', okay, on Highway 94, there's always a house on the left. Once you get next to that cutoff right there to turn down to go in there, and it's all lit up. It's a few acres. It's got, thousands of dollars of lights. That's a house we always go to. And it's always fun. We eat, everybody brings a potluck thing, and we get in there, and, Santa comes and whatnot. And, all the kids obviously get some, but then you also play the joke on like your parents or your grandparents and get them some probably inappropriate gift, and they're on Santa's lap, and everybody's getting a picture of them opening something from like Victoria's Secrets or something like that. And they're just like, oh my God. And so just some of those family or friend Christmas traditions have to be like the diamond ranking. I'm sure everybody has them. And it's just cool to see, and it's cool to learn about everybody else's Christmas traditions.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Mine's similar. It's not the same, but it's similar. But I came up with a phrase called, my diamond ranking is the 4G network. Okay. And what I mean by the 4G network is the 4Gs. It's grandparents, gifts, games, and God. Those four things I think are amazing about Christmas. The grandparents are amazing. They design all these games, and they give you all these gifts. They're always giving. They're always, usually uprooted in faith with God. And it's all just intertwined into one household that's 78 degrees, and I feel like if we're lucky, we get 78 degrees without a fire, at our backs, melting our Christmas presents. But the grandparents come in there, they cook nice, they're always positive, and then they're bearing gifts. They design all these games, and that goes hand in hand with our traditions that we had. We got the games coming up, which we take very seriously.
Yes.
Especially the one with the oven mitt and the one president getting that hoe open. Yeah. But so the 4G network is my diamond ranking for sure.
Nice. Yeah, right. I like that one.
Okay. We'll move on into the Rooks looks, and then we'll get straight into the tracking with the boys. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, sorry. We got the rest of the NFL recap. We got the Buccaneers versus the Packers. I'm always getting ahead of myself. But, yeah, this is the Sunday 12 o'clock game, the Buccaneers versus the Packers. Buccaneers win this game 34-20. Baker Mayfield had himself a day.
Yes, he did.
381 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Just an incredible outing. He's really making this his team. 25 touchdowns total on the year compared to 8 interceptions on a 1-year prove-it deal. So I got nothing but good things to say about Baker Mayfield this year. He's giving him a fighting chance to get into the playoffs. At the beginning of the year, we're watching their training camp videos. We're watching Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield compete basically to make a completion to the tight end. Yeah. And now we're sitting here going, damn, Baker Mayfield could be comeback player of the year. You can make that argument. And just shout out to them. He's working well with the veterans. He's utilized Mike Evans in a great way. He's utilized his checkdowns with Rachaad White, who's become a superior back, especially in fantasy terms, really coming into his role as a young running back one, filling the shoes of Fournette, filling the shoes of, Brady. They compared Brady's year last year to Baker's today. I thought that was a little skewed. I mean, Brady's 45 years old. But and on the flip side of the coin, you got the Packers. They've just been I just feel like they've been banged up all year. Christian Watson's been a lot like T. Higgins this year. Really hasn't had a lot of games under his belt. A hamstring issue will toy with you all year long, and it's been the same thing with Aaron Jones. Every week questionable. Practicing in a limited capacity. Oh, we need you this week. All right, 60% snap share, not really going 100%. Giving it his all for his team. But there hasn't been a lot of games where Jordan Love has gone out there with every weapon under his belt. Yeah. But when he has, he's done well. And I don't want to take anything away from Jordan Love. I think he's exceeded expectations this year. Oh, yeah. And if you're really being objective about it, I know people had high hopes, but I think the Packers will be fine next year. They're only going to get older in terms of rookies and younger players. And the one cat that I really enjoy watching is Jalen Reed. Yeah. And I really regret he was on the waivers in my league. I wanted to start him. It wouldn't have mattered, but he had a fantastic production, and I should have trusted my gut. But he's had three great weeks in a row. He's really coming to his own. He's a hybrid player too. He can take it on the ground. He can catch it through the air, and he's a red zone target. Oh my gosh! Pause. And so yeah, shout out to the Packers, man. And y'all will be okay next year. Y'all are a young team. You got some growing pains, but the Buccaneers, I think, will seep into that leading spot in the AFC South, depending on this. When we'll get into the predictions on Friday with the analysts, but the Rams-Saints game is a big one in terms of playoffs. So that's all I got for that.
It just seems like nobody truly wants to win that division. To me, it's just like, my God. And the thing is, they're going to get a 3 seed or whatever it is, or a top seed. But yeah, to touch on that game a little bit, obviously Baker was insane, and then the Packers defense just hasn't been good. Now they've also dealt with injuries, like you said, but I mean the defense is just bad. I mean, Baker Mayfield could honestly do just about anything that game, throwing the ball wise, and he did. Godwin and Evans had unreal games, and so that was just tough to see. But I agree with you on they'll be good in the future. Yeah, they'll be good in the future. But to get us into our Monday Night Football game, we got the Seahawks versus the Eagles. Okay, Seahawks squeak out a win, 20-17. Just a couple notes I have on this is the Seahawks. They just seem like a frisky team, man. They seem like, I mean, even with Dallas, I mean, a couple things go their way. That's a loss for Dallas. DK Metcalf is coming into his own, and he it finally looks like he's kind of taken over. Like, hey, I'm going to be that dude at receiver, and it's like you throw it to me, I'm gonna catch it, or you throw it to me, there's going to be a PI called. Like it is just like it just seems like he's finally kind of, and I know he's kind of always been that 1A, B with Lockett over there and stuff like that, but it just seems like, especially probably the last 4 weeks, it's like it's the DK Metcalf show over there. And then Lockett and Smith and Jigma are 2s and 3s. And so they just look like they can do a lot on that offense, and he's kind of taken over. And then just to touch on the Eagles a little bit, because I think the Seahawks defense will be fine. I think they're okay. And they've got some pretty young secondary guys out there that can really play and ball hawk and whatnot. I think their linebackers are not good. I know Bobby Wagner was
He's been a liability.
Supposedly a big sign, but I mean it looks tough, and it looks tough out there for him. And he's been exposed this year, but I think the rest of their defense looks pretty good. If they step it up at linebacker a little bit, I think they'll be good. And then to touch on the Eagles, I mean, this game was just bad for them. It looked like almost. Yeah. I mean, it started off really good, but it's kind of been like what the analysts and a lot of us have kind of jumped on this train as well, is like the Eagles almost like refused to just put a game away with running the ball. If you look at all their drives where they had success, they were running the ball very well. And if you look at a lot of their drives where they didn't have success, they were trying to force the ball through the air. And it was just like that kind of takes away from like in the beginning of the season when they were hitting a lot of those deep shots and stuff like that, is essentially they would bring everybody in because they're running the ball, gashing the ball. Well, it makes you feel the box. And then that's when you let your Devontae Smiths and your A.J. Brown get on one-on-one coverage. But right now, that's not there for them. And so they've kind of lost that big play ability and just kind of that explosiveness right there. And for a team that is absolutely built to run the ball and could honestly be putting games away in the third quarter if they just ran the ball more and consistently, it really is just kind of tough to see. And then, I like the quarterback for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great player. Obviously, he's playing hurt, had a flu game. Yeah. He's kind of been dinged up all year. But he made 2 bad plays this game. 2 bad decisions, 2 bad plays. I mean, you essentially need 12 more yards, and you're in field goal range. You have 2 timeouts, so you've got big weapons you can use. Hell, you could even run the ball and call a timeout.
Right. Yeah.
But it was tough to see him make those throws in that situation, and I don't think it's going to be something that's common with him. And it hasn't been, but this year's just not been the best year. And I think it really is, it reflects badly on him just because they're not running the ball as much. And run the ball with him, yes, that's great. But like you've got some studs at running back. And so I just think they need to do a better job at that. I don't think Goddard was really involved that much. So I think they've got too many weapons to be as mismanaged as they're being right now.
I agree.
And to touch on the last bit, Drew Lock, I mean, that was crazy to see. That throw was insane. The catch was insane. And it was, I mean, obviously it worked out well for us because we're Cowboys fans. And then his post-game interview, that was super cool to see. And it kind of brings you back to life and to realism that like these dudes are still humans. Like, we show up every day to work, and some days there's bad days where we're like, damn, am I good at this? Can I still do this? Like, am I getting the job done? And we hold these players and these athletes to such high regard, like they never mess up. And it was cool to see him say, like, I mean, he's a professional athlete. He's the elite of the elite. And he's over here questioning, like, man, can I still play ball? Like, can I do this? And then to go out there and for him to say that on live TV and the reporter kind of feed into it and do a really good job with that as well. Yeah. And letting him kind of explain it. I just thought that was super cool to see from someone of that stature playing. He's kind of been up and down this season with playing, not knowing when he's going to play. And so that was super cool to see. And it was awesome to see him talk about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent point. And to go into that, I would say the Seahawks, I think they are ain't right back university. They've got these, Geno was an amazing story. And then you come in here and, you watch Drew Lock play and just go out there and play fearless. And that's my favorite kind of ball to watch. And Drew Lock, man, just shout out to him. Thanks, by the way. But for doing what you did with the touchdown pass, and it was a great ball. And and just the one quick point I will say about the 2 quick points I'll say about the Eagles is, one, the analyst was right. Before the season, we talked about it. People thought he was a hater. And you just have to, and like the kid says a lot of times, you have to just listen to the language of what he's trying to say objectively. And it's, look, this isn't him. This isn't his identity. His identity is not to throw it 40 times a game. They've got a dominant offensive line where they gash you underneath with the runs, with the RPOs, and then they, like you said, get those one-on-one mismatches. Well, they're breaking away from that. Now they're playing 2 high safeties on them all the time, and they're playing the run well because they're baiting the run. And then when they try and pass, open it up, that's why you're seeing a lot of Jalen Hurts trying to escape the pocket. And then that second point is just with Hurts, being mismanaged and stuff like that. The turnover issue, he's had 3 straight games with 0 touchdown passes. Yeah. And they've been playing hurt, or he's been playing hurt. He's been playing sick. And he's also been playing on odd days. He's had back-to-back, or he's been back-to-back Monday Night Football games. And I think he's having a third Monday night. Oh, wait. Yeah. No, Sunday Night Football game, Monday Night Football game. Next week's another Monday Night Football game on Christmas Day. And it's just been a little wacky schedule for some teams. There's a lot of people I think kind of forget. I think Detroit, Miami, some other teams have had some wacky things that might have caused an L because it's just awkward. Maybe during the 49ers losing streak, that might have been all over the place there, I think. But the Eagles, I think, will kick it back into gear, get in a rhythm, and get comfortable and figure some things out. But I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. We'll just have to see if they. Hopefully, the Cowboys can chalk these next 3 games up and secure number 1 seed.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That would be nice. And I don't really have a lot to say about this Sunday Night Football game against the Ravens. I know. So the Ravens win this one 23-7. There's 3, like I mentioned before earlier in the podcast very briefly, but there's 3 teams in the AFC South that are at 8-6 that have split games with one another. You got the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Texans all right there in the works to get the first seed. And we predicted a couple weeks back that the Texans would deserve that number 1 spot. T-Law has been playing what he's been, lived up and hyped up to be preseason. I understand that he lost Christian Kirk, but he's had his number 1, and they just haven't seemed to get it together. They've been getting less than a 50%, basically target percentage success rate, basically. I see a lot of games where Calvin really has 5 catches for 12 yards or 5 catches for 12 targets, and it's just a little wacky. But they did miss that call. I believe that was a touchdown in the back of the end zone. And it reminded me a lot of the Cole Beasley one years ago against the Bills, where on like a 4th and 20, Dak Prescott rolls out. I think this is one of Dak's best throws of his career.
Oh, yeah. That was insane.
By the way. And catching that ball, getting that knee down. I mean, it was the exact same thing in slower speed, too. It wasn't as bang as the Cole Beasley one. Missed call. I think just to add on to that, the officiating this year has just been atrocious. It's just been terrible. So and I'm so tired of hearing about it because you hear it in baseball too, and you're just like, man, why can't we get it right? Why was it's never been like this? And and maybe it has. We just haven't been paying attention. But and then the last thing I'll say with the Ravens, man, Lamar Jackson, you're having an incredible year. You're an MVP candidate, and you're out there with 3 injured running backs. Gus Edwards is your number 1 now. No tight end 1, no wide receiver 1, and your defense is cranking. You just, man, I mean, you got to give it to him. Lamar Jackson, he isn't going to light up the scoreboard every week, and you definitely shouldn't bet on him in terms of like one significant yardage over the other, because he could either run for 200 or pass for 200 or do both. Shout out for Lamar Jackson. He's got, I guess, half a vote from me for MVP. If he wins against the 49ers, I'd give him the MVP for sure.
Yeah, it's a huge game. Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch much of this game outside of the couple points you talked about. But, the thing I have about Lamar Jackson is how we talk about oppositely of like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson seems like he does what he needs to do to win games. Like
Right.
if he needs to run the ball 12 times for 80 yards and a touchdown, but only pass for 120, like he's doing that. And it seems like he's not much of a stat. Like he doesn't care, and he works with what he has. And I think it's a shout out to him. Shout out to that coaching staff over there. Is like they play good teams in and out. They've done it his whole career, and he just does whatever he needs to do to get the job done. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the stats look like, as long as you win games. And so that's just I think that's something cool to see, especially after signing that big deal this past year. And I'm with you. If he continues to play like he is, you can't not look at him as an MVP candidate as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, now it is time for the Rooks looks. Got way too ahead of myself earlier. But yeah, we got the Rooks looks, the fantasy stardom situms, followed by the heave of the week. And I'll give you a little recap of week 15. I did all right. Not too good, but okay, I told everybody to start Javonte Williams. He ended up getting everybody, 4 PPR points, 12 carries, 27 yards. He was hoed a touchdown on the offensive offsides penalty, but the game was kind of out of reach anyway. I told everybody to start Derrick Henry, the Tennessee running back versus Houston.
Jesus.
Usually he goes off against these AFC South opponents, but I mean, he set the record: 16 carries, 9 yards, 4 receptions, 1 yard. I mean, this is just an atrocious stat line. 5 PPR points. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
And then this was a risky one, but I said because San Francisco had some trouble with running quarterbacks sometimes, but sit Kyler Murray, the Arizona quarterback, playing San Francisco, but he ended up getting basically his projection 15.34 PPR points. He was 26 of 40, 211 yards and a touchdown and 2 picks with 49 yards on the ground with 6 carries. So decent performance there by Kyler Murray. Sit Ezekiel Elliott versus Kansas City. I figured Kansas City would come out of the woodworks firing after their Bills scandal. But 9.6 PPR points for Zeke, only 11 carries for 25 yards, but most of his points came from the 5 receptions that he had. He's been pretty involved in the passing game, so just kind of keep an eye on him for a flex spot if you're low at running back and happen to grab him. And this is the one I hit on that I like the most was the sleeper. David Njoku, the Cleveland tight end versus Chicago. He ended up getting 26.4 PPR points, 10 receptions out of 14 targets, 104 yards, and a touchdown. That's last 2 or 3 games has been exploding with Joe Flacco at the helm. So David Njoku's hopping up the tight end rankings for fantasy. Okay, week 16, stardom situm. Michael Pittman, like you mentioned earlier, might be out. So start Josh Downs, Indianapolis wide receiver versus Atlanta, a team that I think is probably going to give up. Could see a good offensive gain. Indianapolis is trying to get into the playoffs. Pittman, brutal hit. Shout out T's and P's for him. Downs is next in line. Start Jordan Love, Green Bay quarterback versus Carolina. I think this should be a much more healthy team for this game. Carolina, not a great football team. They could upset and just absolutely dud somebody, so watch out for that. But Reed, Dubes, Wicks, and Watson, if they're good to go, you could see a much better production out of Jordan Love. And then sit Terry McLaurin, the Washington wide receiver, versus the New York Jets. Originally, I had a reason why I thought the Jets would play harder, but after the recent reports came out about Aaron Rodgers, needing another 3 or 4 weeks, I'm not sure this one would play into that factor there. But this is just 2 really crappy teams. I don't really like the matchup at cornerback for Terry McLaurin. It's just a feeling. But sit DeAndre Swift, the Philadelphia running back versus New York Giants. Y'all might call me crazy, and I could be completely wrong about this, but he's had 4 straight games under 10 PPR points. It doesn't seem like Nick Sirianni listened to those fans on the sidewalk outside their practice facility telling them to run the ball. You might have given him coffee, but you didn't put any creamer in there. So
yeah,
Hurts. I think Hurts is going to throw versus this weak secondary. It's been their identity for some reason all year long. So maybe expect a big game through the air from Hurts, and maybe not so much from DeAndre Swift. Now he might get yardage, but he's just not getting those red zone targets in the end zone because of the tush push. And then my sleeper. This is another one of my favorite ones. Both my sleepers. Rashee Rice. the Kansas City wide receiver versus the Raiders. Man, he's been productive in his last few games. I mean, he is really coming into his role as a number one. Is he a number one? I wouldn't say so, but I mean, he's really been productive, and Mahomes has been making him look good. He fits the scheme pretty well, but Kelsey's been slacking. When Kelsey starts slacking is when you see Rice's production increase. And so that's your week 16 start him, sit him. And then my heave of the week. This one was kind of tough to find this week, but I ended up finding one that I thought fit perfectly, and that is Drew Lock. And this is a perfect one, I think, for us as Cowboys fans, especially. So let's get right into some play-by-play.
Let's do the play-by-play. Do the roll.
Here we go. And I can do I might do my Joe Buck one. Let's see. All right. 17-13 here, and you got the Philadelphia Eagles, NFC East former champs of 2022, coming in here trying to secure a win. Seahawks with no timeouts. Troy, the Hall of Famer, sitting next to me right here in the booth. Drew Lock drops back and finds a man right side, and that is a disgusting act. That is a disgusting act by Drew Lock, coming in here and slamming his nuts on the table. Securing a number one spot for the Dallas Cowboys, who I hate, by the way, covering. But that is your heave of the week, and that's Drew Lock with your heave of the week.
Hell yeah. Good play.
All right, sweet. The play-by-play. Okay. Tracking the boys. Recap of week 15, our favorite part of the podcast, where we ignored all the depression at the beginning of the podcast, and we'll get into the depression right now. But this was your Fox game of the week. The Buffalo Bills 31, Cowboys 10 at Orchard Park. This was an away game. Weather was kind of shaky, a little windy, a little cold. Oh man, this was my worst fear coming to fruition. But I think it's best that we start with the defense, because most of our complaints are going to come to the defensive side. Then we'll flip back to the offense, and then we'll get into our Dak on Track segment. But what do you have on the defensive side of the ball? And I'll let you take over the defense. And if I have anything left to say, we'll just chime in, because I know we probably have the same exact things we want to say about this game. But yeah, what do you got?
Yeah. So nothing good about the defense, really.
Really?
And so, yeah, just going into it, the defense did not look great. And the reason being, as opposed to like other games like Seattle or even the Eagles ones at the beginning of the year, it's that in this one, it seemed like, and it didn't seem like it was, the Bills basically said like, hey, we're going to run the ball down your throat, and you're not going to do anything about it. And that's what they did. And to have a player like Josh Allen, have weapons like Stephon Diggs and Kincaid and Knox and Davis and stuff like that, and for him to throw, what did he throw, 7 for 15?
Yeah,
or something like that. And 5 of the passes were to a running back. And so to see them do that is kind of disappointing. And I know there's been a lot of hate about Mozzie Smith. And I think it's crazy that you could look at that game and point one player and be like, yeah, that's why we lost, because of Mozzie Smith.
It's because of Mozzie Smith.
Brother, that's not it. Everybody on that defensive line and in the intermediate part of the field just got ran all over. And it really, you just saw flashbacks of when the Rams did it to us in the playoffs a few years ago, when the 49ers do it. Yeah, and it just that looked like that's what it looked like. It just looked like the Bills offense just said like, hey, we're gonna do this and you're not gonna do anything about it. And that's what happened. And it happened all game. James Cook had like 250 all-purpose yards against us. And it was tough to watch. And I just thought it was very fluky. I mean, it'd be one thing if they threw the ball and ran the ball all over us. Like if they did one or the other and just had us guessing the whole game, I feel like that would be different. Or if there was like an absolute, just like they found like one or two matchups that they could expose. Like if they found a DB that, was struggling like Bland was the other day and something like that, just mismatched just a little bit. That would be, I wouldn't say I would be fine, but I would at least be a little more confident. But with this, it just looked like they literally just lined up and said, "We're better than you. We're going to do this, and y'all aren't going to do anything about it." And it really just took the wind out of the sails. And there really isn't. I mean, you can't. I guess you could say the secondary looked okay because they didn't have to throw the ball against them.
Right.
But linebackers did not look good. Defensive line did not look good. The coaching plan going in was not great. I mean, at some point, I thought it was just interesting how you didn't just go, 9 in the box and see what happens. And so that's just that was just tough to see. And I've said it multiple times, a couple times on here, and then plenty of times off the podcast, is when Dallas defense plays good teams, they struggle.
Yeah.
And if you've looked at it, 49ers struggle, Eagles first game struggle, Seahawks struggle. This game, awful. And so that's the only biggest concern I have, is that it seems like when we play bad teams, like, yeah, we smother them. But when we play now, yes, we beat the Eagles pretty bad. And that could have been one thing. You have a very apex moment of the year where you beat the division leader, and then you have to come down from that and play this team. And I know it's in the middle of the gauntlet, and there's all excuses you could look at, everybody being sick and shitting their pants all week and stuff like that, playing in weird weather and whatnot. But it was just like, I mean, to get beat that way was a little disappointing. And seeing how the defense has played good teams, that is the only, I guess, frightening part going through the rest of the Scotland and then getting into the playoffs. That's kind of all I have on the defense. It's pretty one-sided. There's really not many points to make. It just wasn't great.
Yeah, I had 2 pivotal moments from the defensive side of the ball that involved coaching and discipline. And that was the first one is, why did Mike McCarthy not choose to challenge that Diggs fumble? I don't understand it. It completely changed the flow of the game. In that point of the game, your defense is already getting, brutally destroyed, and you need to get them off the field, and you go look at the replay, and it's like clear as day fumble. And it doesn't make much sense to me. I get it. They got back to the line quick and it was fast. And
and my point to follow up with you about that is that, like, bro, we're still in the first half. Like, you got timeouts, just use it. It's one timeout, brother. Like, but he did come out and say, like, nothing was communicated to him. So, like, he couldn't get a replay or anybody looked at it. And I'm like, well, that's tough. Like, but at that point, it's like, it's one timeout. Like, if you challenge it, like, at least your defense gets to rest for 5 minutes, because it's going to take them 30 years to look at this replay. So, but
that's
sorry, go on.
Like, no, I didn't know that. And I'm glad you said it, because I'm like, I mean, I don't expect Mike McCarthy to, be sitting there with all the things he's got to pay attention to go, I'm challenging that. He needs somebody up above going, I just saw the replay, challenge that shit right now. And then, throw that, fat bit, and, you throw the red flag.
Yeah.
But so it just, that's bad on us. Like, that can't happen. That's game management all the way around. And then the 3 key penalties, I think, that killed this game early on: the roughing the kicker on 4th down by Sam Williams, who should have easily blocked this thing. I mean, they
just tackled the kicker.
This is a high school rule. Yeah, this is a high school rule. You don't jump, and you want to put your hands out there. You don't want to jump, but also you jump to get out of the way. Like, bro, like, just run into this foot. Go to the apex point, like, hit the point. And it just was frustrating. It was undisciplined. He has the most penalties on special teams this year as an individual player. And then roughing the passing on 3rd and 4 from DeMarcus Lawrence. I thought this was a flop. I don't think this was on DeMarcus Lawrence, but it was brutal. And you're not going to look, as Cowboys fans, you're not going to get calls on the road. You're not. You're going to have to play. You're going to play against it. And then the unnecessary roughness on 2nd and 19 or 3rd and 19, whatever it was, on Jalen Curse. This was so ticky-tacky.
Oh, dude.
This was so, what, like, I understand, like, crown of the helmet, going to the back of the head, whatever. But, like, bro, you're a safety coming down to play the receiver who's in front of you. The ball is thrown high. It's a misthrow. It's kind of like when you reward an underthrown pass for a penalty. It's like a cheat code. Oh, shit, 3rd and 14, chunk it to somebody down. Oh, I underthrew it. Penalty because you ran it. Yeah, it's like a loophole in the system. And, man, it just aggravated the shit.
Well, and multiple people came out and said that if if he would have caught that ball, that wouldn't have been a penalty. And that's what's nuts is that like it would have been a clean tackle or whatnot if he would have caught the ball. So him missing it is just like, and you're essentially calling a penalty for him hitting him hard. Like, yes,
Right.
there was a slight head-to-head contact, but at the same time, it obviously wasn't malicious. Like he didn't go head down. Like that's just how it ended up. And but I mean, point to what you just said, which was perfect, is that you're the most watched team in the NFL. You're the biggest organization in all of sports. All eyes are on you. You're not. The penalties are not going to go your way most of the time.
No, and it's like a movie. They're gonna cheat in the ring. In the Gladiator, you're gonna get dirt thrown in your eye. You're gonna be stabbed before the fight. Those things happen when you're the guy that everybody. When the Cowboys lose, David Hellman talked about it on Speak. The Cowboys lose, it's good for business. So I don't want to be there. I'm not taking the victim side here. I'm just saying that's how it is. No. Man up, suck it up, drop your nuts, and play your asses off. And I'm not your owner either. I'm just saying, you know what I'm trying to say. But I do want to play this clip though. I thought this was a pretty impressive strategy from Joe Brady, and then we can move into the offense. But I had a clip right here about him doing in-game transition. So.
Well, like I I'm probably a broken record when I say this, but there's a way to win every game, and the other coaches get paid too, right? And so we think we have an idea going into the game about, hey, how we think this is how they might play it, or this is how we think our guys are going to respond to something, and then sometimes we get that, sometimes we don't. It's it's critical that we find that whatever that is working, or try to continue to try to find whatever that is if it's not. And so, I think last night was just a product of, I don't think anybody envisioned being able to have that much success. I'm not going to sit here and say I knew that going into the game, but I felt confident in the guys up front. I felt confident we'd be able to run the football, and, it wasn't broken. So why try to fix it? And, I was proud of the way that the guys responded and kind of how they played. And, they didn't blink. They were like, do it again. And just seeing our receivers and our tight ends, even Josh, just the way that they were playing, knowing that the pass game wasn't the emphasis. It was a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of NFL coaches seem to get away from this, and I think that's key about what Dallas needs to do on the road. Obviously, you're going to have your struggles. Man, change things up. If it ain't working, fix it. And this was like high school. It's like, man, this one play to the left is really working. We just do it all night. The smash concept, just do it all night. And the last thing I'll say about the defensive side of the ball, in terms of the Bills, which one shout out to Joe Brady with the offensive adjustments mid-game, like, hey, this shit's working, do it. But we talked about it. Josh Allen, 7 of 15 on the night. He gets the game ball.
Oh, that was tough.
He gets the game. I know, I could see it on Josh Allen's face, like, what the hell? Like, at post-game interview, he's like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, and they gave him the game ball. I thought that was he was like, man, why?
Yeah, made no sense.
So all right, offensive side of the ball. Look, not a lot of evidence here about any offense in particular, because like I said, these penalties, the time of possession was drastically different for the Bills compared to the Cowboys. It just killed us offensively. There was no room to generate a rhythm. And what's unfortunate, and one of the key points I have written down here, is that the run game was working early on. I mean, Pollard was looking smooth. The offensive line was getting an outstanding push, and we never got an opportunity to use it. And this is a weaponized arsenal to use. If your run game is working on the road and you have an opportunity to, and I hate to use the word, because dare I say it, because Cam Newton say it, but game manage on the road against a really good team and control the W, there ain't nothing wrong with that. And in a game where we needed somebody like Pollard, this was one of my predictions, if everything went right in the previous pod, was that I trust our offensive line and our run game more than theirs. And what happened. But I'm like, we were getting such a good push on the offensive line. We never had an opportunity to carry out with it because the Cowboys got into, unfortunately, heave mode, and they couldn't do shit. I mean, there was 2 high safeties the entire night. They weren't stacking the box. Nobody was open. If you watch the replays, Dak's trying to scramble out in the pocket and look around. Nobody's getting separation, and they're getting to the quarterback quick. They're generating pressure very fast. And the last thing I'll say, Terrence Steele had an awful, awful night at right tackle. So just not much on the offensive side.
Yeah, and the same thing on the defense. They're just the same as the defense and the offense. Like, there's really nothing good to talk about. It just seemed like there was never a rhythm. It seemed like there was just something off the whole time. And like you said, they were getting pressure with 4 all night. Nobody was getting separation. I mean, and this is on Dak as well, which we'll talk about, but I think a lot of at the line adjustments he was not correct on. But I agree with you. It seemed like running the ball was working and at least taking some pressure off the offensive line. And it just seemed like they were so quick honestly, to me, it seemed like they were so quick to just shell up and go conservative mode super quick. And that's cool and all if it's like the Jets game where they're giving you a part of the field, which they were. The middle of the field was really open a lot of the time. And just there was no separation. There was nobody there. And just nothing seemed to work. And, honestly, I mean, we all knew it. This game looked over by halftime. Yeah. And, it was just tough to watch. And, I guess if one positive note, it seems like Pollard is finally coming back to fruition. Yeah. A lot of people forget that his injury last year was a broken leg. Okay. So, I mean, he still broke his leg. And then the year before that, he had a plantar fasciitis tear. So, like, he's had 2 years where, he's kind of dealt with a little bit of injury. And so it is something that you do, like, have to come back from. And it takes a little bit, as we've seen with a lot of different athletes and stuff like that. But it is good to see at this time of the year that he's getting fully healthy and full on track, because this might be part of the year where, hey, we need to just control the game. And we need to be able to run the ball in the third and fourth quarter and put games away rather than have to get into a shootout match. Exactly. But, like I said, not a lot of good things from the offense. I know I'm surprised not more people talk about Dak's interception, but at that time of the game, it was like, who cares? Might as well throw another one. Shoot. It's like, it's like, I mean, I'd rather see him throw an interception on something down the field than where the hell that was. But, really, really tough and really kind of disappointing outing from both sides of the ball in this game. And that's kind of all I have to say about that.
Yeah. And that kind of transitions perfectly into the Dak on track. We were talking about it. And you probably saw the text when we were in the chat off the record, before halftime. I was like, this is one of those games where Dak's going to throw a pick in the second, like in the fourth quarter, and just people will go nuts about it. Oh, interceptions, blah, blah, blah. And just trying to make a play, coach, kind of mentality out there. Like, well, might as well go balls to the wall here. And, unfortunately, he threw to the shortest receiver we got, like 8 feet above his head, trying to throw. But, we'll get the chart up for you guys here. I mean, obviously, it's not impressive at all. You don't expect a high grade from us at all. But, here's your I'll hide that for you guys. Here's your passing chart if you're watching, but if you're listening, he went 21 of 34, 134 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had that one deep pass incomplete early on in the game that he missed by inches. And the rest were just under 10 yards. I mean, nothing was working in the middle of the field. Nothing was working intermediately. It was just very, very poor production schematically, offensively, and because of the defense, you could argue with just hand in hand, everything just did not work out.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, I said it on Twitter, the Cowboys didn't leave the tunnel, or they didn't come out the tunnel before the game. But my grade on this one was a D+. And don't let the plus fool you. I like to have that plus in there is because this is the Dak Prescott I know and love at the end of the game when he's just a dirt bag kind of a game, and he just no quitting him, and trying to get some type of a rhythm to go into Miami. It was nice to end on a score, even though it wasn't a pass. But people were saying like, why is Dak Prescott in? I didn't like him being in, but what I do like is that, I just remember that 2019 year when we were 8-8. Defense was atrocious. Mitchell Trubisky looking like Lamar Jackson on us. But the one person that consistently showed up every night, every day, every time was Dak Prescott. No matter the score, we were always like, man, the only person who showed up today was Dak.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of this game, even though the Cards were down. There's no quitting Dak, and I know personally he don't give a shit about no MVP. And he said it after in the post-game press conference, like, I don't care. I just want to, and that's him. We all know that. But yeah, D+ for him. I got a 68.8 grade for him. It just kind of a little kudo points at the end for just, I guess, not giving up.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a D to D+ letter grade. And like you said, nothing went the way that any of us wanted it to. And I give him mainly a D, not just because, like, obviously there's going to be bad performance or whatnot. I thought some of his line adjustments and some of his decision making wasn't necessarily all there where it has been the last 7 weeks. I thought, and this props to the Bills. I thought the Bills did a great job on defense. Disguising coverage, moving in and out of zones, and getting pressure with minimal defensive linemen and whatnot. But I just thought it just wasn't. They just weren't about it this game, and you could see on both sides of the ball it just wasn't there. So yeah, I give them a D to D+, and just obviously hoping for a bounce back game next week.
Yeah, and we will get into predictions later this week. Like I said, we're going to be recording with the analysts on Friday. We're going to be dropping it Saturday morning before those games, so you can get back on track with your predictions over the Christmas weekend and see how those predictions and recap come into fruition. Once the holiday ends, so you'll have 2 episodes worth of content for the next 2 weeks. Should be an exciting week. I really do think the Cowboys will come out on fire. And me and Ryan will talk about it. We'll talk about it soon, but they have no choice now. With that, after the win from the Seattle, hopefully we see good things. But this is TRAK 27, a TRAK Christmas part 1. Part 2 will be later this week. And like I mentioned before, if you're a first-time listener, if you're somebody that's been along for the journey, just always remember to download, like, follow, share it, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube and Spotify. And then you can obviously listen to it on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. I mean, you name it. Spotify when your phone's closed. But yeah, our link trees. Check it out in our social media bios. It'll give you access to all of the different platforms that we have. And we're excited for a new year. We probably won't be back until I'll probably drop a little something before the new year, a little New Year's resolution special. But we've got some really big plans for 2024 that we've been collaborating on and we're excited about, some upgrades and some guests and whatnot. So a lot of promises to fulfill in 2024. But Merry Christmas to everybody. Keep those traditions intact. We will see you guys on Saturday, and y'all have a good holiday. So
yes, sir. Merry Christmas.
All right. Appreciate it. The Medical Guy, as always, thank you. And we will see y'all later.